ask to come to the stage to discuss about youth education and pathways to work, Professor Sarah Irwin and Cuchulainn Sutton-Hamilton from Voluntary Action Leeds.
Hi, I'm Sarah Irwin. I'm Professor of Sociology here at the University of Leeds. I just want to reflect on young people and pathways through education for the labour market, because there are particular challenges facing this age group at present. In 5 minutes, I'm going to hand over to Cuchulainn, and he's going to take a more practical, sort of practice-based view. I'm going to talk in more general points. I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to make 6 points. So I'm already making life difficult for myself. First point is this, that there are continuities as well as changes in the circumstances confronting young adults. They're not new. I ran a research project, in fact my PhD, in the 1980s, and there were lots of debates then about young people being trapped as teenagers because of mass youth unemployment, and so forth. But also there was a wider sweep of young people becoming dependent on their parents for longer, those who couldn't stay with their parents face particular difficulties, of course. But those trends have been in train for at least a generation. There are some really important and significant changes in the wider context as well, of course. Okay, secondly, I just think we need to be really careful that research as well as policy finds ways to address complexity. So, for example, when we look at young people, we need to find effective ways of understanding the context in which they are embedded. We know reproductive inequality across generations is really important. We know that parents, how people's family backgrounds and how people do parenting is incredibly important. All right, but of course that doesn't mean that inequalities are located within families. The parents are partly responding to the situations in which they are. I mean, we know as well that most parents do the same stuff. All parents love their children, do the best by them, invest vast amounts of emotional and other energies and resources in their children. But how they're situated plays out in very different ways. So it's finding mechanisms, finding effective ways of both researching that, but getting policy and politicians to recognise complexity. Not just recognise it, but find ways to effectively tackle it. Thirdly, an interesting gap has emerged in research over recent years, and to a degree in the kind of policy focus. There's been an awful lot of focus on higher education and youngsters going to higher education, and rightly a lot of debate and concern about that for all sorts of reasons around inequalities. A lot of focus on those who are truly disadvantaged, not in education, employment and training, for example. But interestingly, a really big gap in research emphasis on what's actually been dubbed the missing middle. You know, maybe up to 40% of the population of young people who are perhaps wishing to leave school to go into vocational training, technical training, to go directly to employment and so forth, who are much less kind of recognised as a group for research and until recently really for policy. In 2011, Alison Wolfe estimated that up to 400,000 16 to 19-year-olds were doing courses of little value. A third of the cohort, they're going to courses of little value. What are they going to do after that? I mean, this is really, really kind of, urgent and interesting and really important kind of area for research and policy. Fourth point, am I okay? I wanted to say something really briefly about research methods. And research methodology is not just about technical expertise, although that's important, but it's about how we frame our research questions. That shapes what we see. Problems are multifaceted. Different methods give us a window on multifaceted and complex problems, but we need to find ways to understand that complexity and to tap into it through our research designs and our mechanisms for addressing these problems. I mean, just a couple of projects that I've been involved in have been qualitative longitudinal projects. Sophia's making a signal at the back. Am I to stop? Am I out of time? Okay. All right, so I'm going to take...
Maybe just hit up your last couple of points.
All right, the headlines for them were... Okay, fortunately, I put my most important points at the top. I'm developing research in those areas, trying to bring those together, trying to develop partnerships with external partners around these areas, of looking at a kind of a group in the middle, looking at inheritance across generations, at two generations views, and looking at how some of these inequalities evolve through time, through qualitative longitudinal research methods. And I wanted also to think about different models for developing research projects. But let's discuss that perhaps in the group afterwards. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne.
Hello there. So I want to talk about, as my question might have suggested, research and practice. I moved from a sort of university education setting into delivering research in the third sector because I really wanted to be part of coming up with solutions to the issues that are affecting the people who are least equal in our society. I really believe that research can bring understanding and solutions to small problems. And with that, you can start building a larger scale solutions that will help the lives of people in the city. These solutions need to be adopted in order to then work on changing policy. I really believe that it comes from the top down. You provide a solution that then gets adopted into policy. The third sector is constantly coming up with new ways of working. We have lots and lots of anecdotal evidence. It's literally coming out of our ears. Every meeting I go to, another anecdote about a situation that a group of people are facing in the city. But a lot of this information gets wasted because it's not being communicated, not being written down, and not being turned into research projects. A project that I deliver is called Engaging Voices, and we deliver research and engagement from the public sector through third sector groups in order to increase their diversity and talk to seldom heard groups, or as I prefer to call them, easily ignored groups, because if we don't make the effort to go and talk to them, then they are seldom heard. So it's all about the energy that we put in. This is just one of the tools that the third sector has got and that I implore you to take advantage of in terms of being able to reach the people that you want to, be able to find out what's going on in the sector and in the communities in the city. But the one subject that I wanted to talk about was from a piece of research that we did at Voluntary Action Leeds called the Young Lives Leeds NEAT Research, which was qualitative and quantitative in nature, and came across loads of different barriers, loads of different sort of outcomes from what it was being neat in the city. The one that I want to focus on was the application process, so actually applying for jobs. So we already know that people were lacking maybe educational skills, maybe confidence, maybe literary skills in order to be able to get themselves jobs, but I feel that there's something fundamentally wrong with the actual application process. Is it fit for purpose? Is it inclusive? I personally don't think it is. What we came across is people applying for 70 jobs a week, not hearing back from a single one of them. This having a massive impact on their mental health, and them not knowing whether they're going to start the next application because they've got their heart already set on the last one. And I don't think this is just affecting the most sort of like neat young people. It affects all people. Of that not hearing back from a job is very irritating, especially if you're doing lots and lots of them. It can turn into a whole big feature in your life. So what I'm sort of through some of our experiences, we had sort of Sainsbury's had their application process. If you couldn't put in your GCSE results, your application couldn't go any further. It literally didn't let you tick any other boxes. You can't put your experience in there until you've added in your actual life experience, until you've added in your employment history and your educational history. So I'm putting it out to you, and in many ways, because your university can provide research solutions and energy behind these things, about coming up with a new way of doing the job application process that means that employers are getting the best candidates and that there are less barriers in the way of people being able to actually find the work that the rest of their futures depends on. And this really needs to be done in a win-win way. So employers need to be getting the best candidates, and we need to have a process that doesn't exclude people. finding little areas like that where you can improve something for both parties, because the business community is quite slow to move to the needs, especially in terms of equality issues. And this was one of those ways that I think we'd be able to get them to bend by demonstrating with evidence that there is another way of finding the best candidates for their jobs. That's about it, really. But thank you very much for your time. We will be carrying on doing this discussion, and I'll try not to make everything about practice, but you never know. But thank you.
Thank you.